So I was sort of really thinking about talking about career transitions from the point of view of the pattern that I've noticed in the last couple of last 18 months, specifically during the pandemic. One of which is that I think it's given people a lot of time to think and question what they are doing and why they are doing it. And I also think that it's the pandemic has given people sometimes some forced choices. There are people who have been impacted, they've been laid off, etc. But I also see a number of people who I've been working with who are sort of really saying because some of them have lost, some loved ones, and they've lost many precious things, and as a result, many of them are really wondering why they need to do what they have to do. And so delighted to have all of you here join in, and we will explore what is driving career transitions and what are some of the patterns. So Sanjeev, if you can just unmute and just introduce yourself, and then we'll take it from there.
Thank you. I am Sanjeev Roy, a coach, consultant. There's a lot of work in my coaching that I do in terms of career counseling. A lot of my work is in the NGO space. I'm also a future gazer. I've co-authored a book last year of the pandemic, a book of stories, and a theater enthusiast. Yeah, that's me.
So I just wanted to sort of get started on, what are some of the patterns you have seen in the last 18 months in terms of career transitions, and what are the questions that people are raising, which is post pandemic, in these last 18 months, what have you seen which wasn't there before? What is different?
Uh, I mean, the one of the big things is how people are thinking or looking at success itself. There is a whole re-evaluation, and earlier success was, if I may say so, peer reviewed, which is what did what did your batchmates do, what did they have, what's their starting salary, when did they get the car, and you measured yourself according to that. So there is a lot of that kind of thing, and as people have gone through all these lockdowns, isolations, etc., a lot of that set of things, which are the very physical, material things, people have begun to question. I mean, how important is this, and is this how I need to measure my success? The size of my car, so on and so forth. So, therefore, the parameters for success, as people have also started thinking about what is important in their life, that started becoming different, and the whole lot of set of things around why I think that's happening. One, of course, as I said, is about the space that people have been in and having had time to reflect. The other very interesting thing is that we've seen it in social media, the explosion of the home cook and the gardener and the dancer and the singer and so on and so forth. So I think a lot of people some people at least have rediscovered some passions and what is important, and they've also figured that they can learn a new skill. So that's the other thing that's triggered interest in people and belief that I can actually do something. I don't need to be stuck here, which I think is very interesting and happened because of the pandemic. The third is what has happened in the second wave. In our own little survey that we do amongst people who have been associated with us, we found that almost 50% of people say that they've lost somebody close to them. Now, this loss is what's got people thinking about what is important in life, their own mortality, that time is limited. Why not follow your dreams and do something that? And I think one other factor which I think is going to begin to play a lot more is what the second wave saw in very large measure was this other explosion, the explosion in volunteering. So people got engaged in their communities in various kinds of things, whether it was in trying to get oxygen or remdesivir or plasma or whatever it is. The people who launched apps, who started services, all kinds of things that people got into. And it was all directed at serving the other. Not necessarily. I mean, of course, it satisfied a personal need of dealing with the pandemic themselves, but there was this whole huge sense of satisfaction in serving the other, which happened. And there is a lot of people who've experienced that. I've had some conversations with, particularly the younger people, who are not talking about, why is my job so important? Why there is this thing, I need to make an impact in life, and look, and this is vastly more important. And even when they're going back to office, what they're asking for is roles or purpose defined in this fashion. I think this is another thing which, in my experience, is beginning to bubble up. Is going to be one of the other drivers for people looking at career changes.
I also think, Sanjeev, I think it's an excellent summary of so many things that you talked about. I think that, I'll just sort of riff on the last bit that you said that, people are questioning, why is my job so important? I mean, what really should I be focusing on? And, all the things that you said about redefining success or reevaluation of success, etc. I think what is happening is the purpose, that we derive from work alone, because so much of our identity is driven by work. The way people introduce themselves, I'm Dr. So and so, or I work in so and so, I'm VP of so and so. If you notice the way people introduce themselves, it tells you what is so important to their identity. But I also think that now a lot of the younger people are really looking at finding that purpose, not necessarily in the work that they are doing, but also outside. So you talk about the passions, whether it's the volunteering or, moving into fairly radically different spaces. So I think that is what I see has happened. The time, so space and time and the trigger, they have come together to really create this whole desire to explore something and ask yourself, should I be doing something completely different in my life? And people are willing to jump that much further away from what they were credentialed to do. So, you may have been credentialed to be an engineer or whatever, and people are willing to become a stand up comedian to do that. Or they are actually, I also think that, from, I also see a fragmentation of sources of income that when you are employed, you have one source of income, so it's from that employer's bank to your bank. It's that. But now, I also see that people are trying out different skills. I wrote about this as Career 3.0, that you earn your living through a portfolio of skills, a portfolio of resources, a portfolio of inflows. So I think all these three in portfolios. So we are beginning to see the emergence of Career 3.0, which is almost something which has happened in a hurry because of the pandemic. Um,
I agree with you completely. And um, so, so what I have seen is one, I mean, this whole focus on purpose, and the purpose that people define for themselves is the impact that I'm going to have, and how I live my own life by my own rules. And so, therefore, this is important. And doing these multiple things. So somebody who's a content writer is also a weekend home chef. That's like a fairly common kind, and those kind of combinations that are emerging, and both yield give a person a great sense of satisfaction, as well as they bring an income, and people are saying that they're perfectly fine to be doing something like that, and they want options that will allow them to operate in this fashion. That's
so,
that's something that's very clearly visible. Yes.
Anand's question is this COVID specific or a general trend among younger people joining the workforce?
So what COVID would have done is that COVID has catalyzed this for multiple reasons. One, of course, is uh, the one major side of it is the redundancies that are either there or promised to be there. So that's one kind of thing, which is a reason. The other is that the pandemic itself got people into spaces and positions from where it has helped re-evaluation and re-looking at things. So that's the second thing that's happened. And the third is, of course, this has been the trend. So the COVID has been a catalyst. It has been something that we've been seeing over the last 4 or 5 years, not just in younger people but in older people as well, about questioning where they are, what they want to do, re-looking at careers, thinking that they'll have to do more than one thing and actually landing up, some people landing up doing more than one thing, a lot more of people doing assignments and projects rather than being in jobs, and being a lot more fluid when they do something like that. So, I mean, there is somebody, a young person that I've had the opportunity to work with, who started as a product designer. That's what the person is trained to do. And from that product design base has gone on to become not just expanded into various aspects of design, has become a filmmaker. So, I mean, and actually continues to do product design. And this, it depends on what they're doing, where they're working, and does all of these things and is frightfully happy and very content and learning new things on the side as they do it. So that's the kind of thing that's been on for some time. This has simply catalyzed.
So I think there are, COVID has what has done is done three sort of elements which I think are driving this career transition shift. One, I think, because people were in that same space, they were locked up and all that, so their spending needs dropped. You don't need to go out, you don't need to. So a whole lot of spending which used to happen simply because of the fact that we had those choices outside, that's dropped. It sort of created a little bit of a cushion, financial cushion. But I also think that there is another element of it, and this I'm assuming that people were not otherwise adversely impacted in sense of getting laid off, etc. Number two, I think there was a lower supervision by the bosses in the office. Because if I switch off my camera and video, there's nothing you can do to figure out what I'm doing. And in India, you have a great excuse if you say there's no bandwidth, there's nothing anybody can do to challenge that. And so I'm going to continue to do what I have to. And so I think that's the second is low supervision. The flip side of that is greater amount of autonomy in making those decisions. And so if we look at what Daniel Pink talks about, autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So mastery and purpose and autonomy are all coming together in the pandemic, because doing the assignment, or the fluidity that you talked about, is a way of building mastery by myself. It's not something my employer mandates that I do. So I think these three elements, also spending time with, you see two things that have also changed, which is relationships which have, things which are fragile have broken. So you see a lot more, separations, etc., all of that. Partly also because, in some cases there have been losses. As you rightly said, I also know of so many people who we have lost as friends, etc. So people are rethinking and really categorizing and saying, okay, I have 500 friends on Facebook. Do I really have 500 friends? Because, when I needed something, what really happened? And also the power of the strangers to come in and impact you, when everything else. I mean, I've seen, the other day I was talking to somebody who was a IS officer, and he was saying, wherever I tried to get help by saying that I'm an IS officer, I can, please help me with this, because he wanted something for his father. He said that I just put it on Twitter, and some stranger said that, look, I'm making a phone call, go and talk to this particular doctor and make that happen. So the power of weak ties, beyond what you already know, it is explored. Not just as you are doing it in your career, you're also doing it in relationships. So I think these are the four factors that I see which have become very powerful.
Yes, yes, Abhijit. And I think this question that Anand is asking, does this all mean that CSR will move from money invested to employees' time invested? Uh, the answer is yes and no. As in, of course, employees' time invested, because that's the kind of thing that gives employees the a sense of purpose, and it's one of the things that organizations are doing. So I know, and I'm working with organizations where we work together, and the whole every person in that organization has taken on the task of vaccinating a certain number of people on the other side of the digital divide. Okay. So that's like a very personal thing, and that whole and the organization itself is doing a lot for vaccine hesitancy. So that's one example of how the if you like the CSR funds or the time allocated or the energy allocated is being given to employees also to do something because they have come in. And I've seen this, and now I've seen this now in three organizations, and these are all organizations that have a very large population of very young people. So when I say very young people, meaning the average age is going to be around 30 or maybe a little lower, and that's where this kind of thing has really worked very well. Have you seen anything like this, Abhijit?
Yeah, when I see that, I think it is cutting across age groups and the triggers are different. You're right that, the impact of, I mean, historically we have not been known, India has not been known for a whole lot of, this whole business of charity, at a particular scale and doing some things for others who are unknown. We always like to do charity where I can go and sort of, get some credit out of it. A lot more charity, I guess, is triggered by the income tax refund you will get or waiver than the desire to help. That has been in the pre-pandemic situation. I see that shifting in many of the conversations, that people are really looking to do things around purpose and a lot more time. And I wonder whether that happens when people reach a certain degree of financial flex, or financial flex potentially is what may trigger. Would you say that it's triggered by that, or it's triggered by the external event of a
In the case
shared
of the
experience of?
pandemic, I mean, there is, you can see that there's also been an explosion of individual giving, and it has. I didn't find the connection with a certain degree of financial
Yeah. So that's what
ability.
I'm saying. That
Hmm.
it's happened during the pandemic. It's happened because I just want to give, because people are supporting other neighbors, etc. I mean, whole lot of things. People are doing things for complete strangers where they would not know who's done it. They would not be able to pay back, and there is no financial return or whatever. So yes,
Yes.
that has been triggered by the pandemic. Certainly
Hmm.
saying that.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that this individual giving has really gone up. I mean, we saw it happening in last year, but this year it has exploded. And if you were to think of purpose driven work, what do they need? They need people who are committed and they need money. So I think the conditions are right for many people wanting to, who are looking to do something like this, for them to be able to do it far more right than they have been before. So in terms of careers, there are young people who are wanting to do this, and they will find options there. Organizations are looking to provide people space for them to feel fulfilled with this kind of thing. So that's also something that organizations are doing. It's great for driving internal motivation and engagement and sort of retention within. There are other people who have completely reevaluated their lives in this time and say what is important. I've got, kal ho ya ho na ho, we don't know. So let me go out and do what I think I really want to do. I don't need the big car, I don't need this. I need to feel fulfilled with what I'm doing. So that's the kind of thing that has also happened. And I've had people and worked with them who've actually gone on and taken on other jobs where they've got less money, but it's the kind of thing that they really want to do and not really bothered about what anybody else thinks about it.
So I think it's a lot to do with the rise of intangibles. I mean, it's happening at the organization level also. Things which are whether it is the quality of the leadership or talent, culture, etc. I mean, that's one level. But as we've seen that many of these things also happening at the individual level. Things like fulfillment, purpose, and it's sort of changing the way we define our life. Because one thing, if is that I'm 30 and I'm going to live to be 100. You have a certain attitude towards that. But once you think that, I'm 30, but I could be gone tomorrow, because you've seen so many examples. So that changes how you view your own mortality, and therefore what you do about your career, etc., is a byproduct of that, because then you are far more conscious about the choices. And so, as Ishan says, youngsters flocking to the metro cities are now moving back to their hometowns to be near the family. And also, therefore, I potentially think that this is going to see a sort of a shakeout in terms of finding new employers. People will either find employers based on location, or they'll find based on the purpose that they want to serve, or they are going to find employers who give them the kind of flex that people are looking at. And flex is one of those intangible factors which has gone up hugely. So that is going to lead to all this debate that we are seeing about back to office, and should it be one day working in office or all remote, etc., all of that. But I think underlying that, we are missing the whole point that it is a rise to really reevaluate what career might mean, and therefore the intangible factors are far more in that assessment than what it has always been. Earlier, it was about, as you started the conversation, Sanjeev, about it's peer reviewed. That am I? That's your benchmark. But now it's really boundaryless. It's no longer held by the peer. My definition of success is a lot more by community, rather than by peer, and a lot more by a smaller group of people who I care about. So I think it's that shift.
Yes, definitely. This is, like always, this is what we are beginning to see, and this I'm fairly certain is going to keep building up, and it will build up with those who are the more, what you might loosely term, the more talented and more able, and therefore more capable of doing things like this. So, what the kind of talent that organizations look for, we might find that the best of those talents are looking for more flex, are wanting to do other things. For them, purpose is important. For them, what impact they have in their life is important. Careers have to be defined like that. There is also another interesting side to this, which is about the, the the women who are for whom work at home has actually meant something else. Work from home has meant something else. Though interestingly, we are seeing that many of them are, even though we thought that they would want to come back to office, a larger number of them are actually saying no, they don't want to come back to office, but they want to keep working. So flex for that group is also has become very important, because there is a certain life that has been lived for the last 1.5 years. You can't suddenly unlive it and go back to saying that, hey, let's go back to what it was. It doesn't work like that. These 1.5 years have had a particular impact on people, and that's the reality. And given that reality, people want to think of things very differently. Women want to think of the workspace and the workplace very differently. People want to do different things. They want to explore. They want to have an impact with what they do. They want to feel that they're doing something really meaningful in life. So for many people, and particularly, as I keep saying, the ones that organizations would want, the brighter, the more talented, so on and so forth, kind of people, they are the ones for whom these choices, who feel that they want to exercise these choices as well. Yes. So, yes, and Asim, you are confirming that for two firms, 200 people, all married women, have requested that they wish to work from office, which is very interesting, because for them, getting back to office would mean, and that's what we have believed, but we've seen some research, and it's not just ours, but even larger research, where it seems that the reality is a little different, and many people actually want to remain in want the flexibility of work from home and work from office